cerebral passage of the Virat Roop is the Vedic hymns. The jaws and the teeth are Lord Yam. The two rows of teeth is the art of affection. The smile is Maya Devi, and his glance is the material world, samsar. In 32, the upper portion of the lips is modesty. The chin is hankering. The breast is religion. The back is irreligion. The genitals is Brahma. The testicles are Mitra and Varun. The waist is the ocean. And the stack of bones is the hills and mountains. In 33, the veins are the rivers. The hairs are the trees. The breath is the winds and the prowess of Anantashesh. The movement is the passing of ages. The activities is the reaction of the gunas. The hair of the head is the clouds and the dress is twilight. I'm sorry, this is verse 34. The hair of the head is the cloud. The dress is twilight. The intelligence is the supreme cause of material creation. And the mind is the moon. In 35, the consciousness is the Mahatattva. The ego is the Rudradev. The nails is the horse, mule, camel, and elephant. The hips is the wild animals and quadrupeds. In 36, the artistic sense is the birds. The intelligence is Manu. The residence is humanity. And the musical rhythm is the Gandharvas, the Vidyadharas, the Charans, and the Apsaras. And his prowess is the demoniac soldiers. In 37, this verse, the face is the Brahmanas, the arms is the Kshatriyas, the thighs is the Vaishyas, the feet is the Shudras, and the prescribed duties is the method of sacrifices with ingredients and devas. So this was one set of description that we had, and earlier on we had we had studied yet another description of the Virat Roop in the terms of the cosmic creation. So this was verses 26 to 28, and I'll go over that just for the sake of completeness. So in verse 26, we studied that the patal was the sole of the feet, the rasatal was the heel and the toes, the mahatal is the ankles, and the talatal is the shanks. In 27, sutal is the knees, vital is the lower part of the two thighs, atal is the upper part of the two thighs, and bhumi is the navel. 28, Swargalok is his chest, the Maharlok is his neck, the Janalok is the face, the Tapalok is the forehead, and the Satyalok is the head. So these are the different descriptions of the Virat Roop. I will send a copy of these tables to Prem Kishore Prabhu, and he can share it with you. I was trying to get the picture. I was not able to get. There is also somebody had made a nice picture of the Virat Roop with the representation. So it has the clouds as his head, and the Brahmanas are sitting in his face. But I wasn't able to get it. I remember seeing it somewhere, and I may have saved it. If I'm able to get it, I'll share it. If one of you can get it, then you can also send it to me. It gives a nice pictorial view. Okay, so verse 38. Yanasa Vishwara Vigrahasya Yaha Sanivesha Katito Mayate Sandharyate Asmin Vapushisthaviste Mana Swabudhya Nayatos Tikinchet. I have thus explained to you the gross, material, gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead. One who seriously desires liberation and concentrates his mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more in this material world. So this is an important statement that needs to be understood when Sukadev Goswami is saying, because there is nothing more than this in this material world. So when the impersonalists read this statement, the point that they will conclude is that there is nothing superior to the Virat Roop. And Vishwanath Chakravarti and Srila Prabhupada, they explain that when Sukadev Goswami says that other than this there is nothing else, the point that he's making is that whenever the mind wanders due to its fickle nature, the intelligence should say that other this is the Lord. Other than this, there is nothing else. So because when Sukadev Goswami is saying that other than this, there is nothing more in this material world, so he's drawing the box over here. He's saying that within this material world, wherever your mind wanders, whether it goes to the prowess of the Kshatriyas, whether it goes to the beauty of the Apsaras, whether it goes to the intelligence of the Brahmanas, whether it goes to the higher planetary system. So wherever it goes, when one meditates on the Virat Roop, one will say that this is nothing other than a, a limb of the Virat Roop. Other than that, there is nothing else. So the statement, if it is rephrased, it says that for a person who is aspiring to be a transcendentalist, the meditation should be that everything in the material world is connected to Krishna. Other than that, there is nothing else. So one may question at this point that the material world also contains things like lust, greed, and envy. So what happens when one's mind goes over there? When one mind goes to to the um, to the Kshatriyas, Kshatriyas are in the mode of passion, and they say that the Kshatriyas are linked the to the Virat Roop. So does that mean that the Virat Roop is contaminated by the mode of passion? Or similarly, when the mind goes to the animals are deeply in the mode of ignorance. So when one looks at a camel or other quadruped and then says that other than that there is nothing else, which means this is a representation of Krishna. Krishna is in the mode of ignorance. So the point that is made over here is Sukdev Goswami at this point is deliberately quiet about it. Why? Because the process by itself will elevate one to the mode of goodness. So when one makes it a habit of seeing everything in relationship to Krishna, then automatically one ascends to the mode of goodness. And the qualities that are concomitant with the lower modes are eradicated. So two things need to be kept in mind. One is Sukdev Goswami is not spending a lot of time on the meditation on the Virat Roop, because that's not his purpose. He's putting it here. The title of this chapter is First Step in God Realization. So he's putting it over here as a stepping stone, not as the end goal. The second point that is being made is that we will see that in scriptures that the means to an end are often considered to be an end in itself. So because of the need to be terse, and also because of the need to preserve the end goal in mind, many times the intermediate steps are collapsed into the end step. So like even in bhakti, Right? It is said, if one chants the name of Krishna one time, he will go back to Godhead. Right? Now we all have experienced that's not true. We have chanted name of Krishna so many times, we are still in the material world. But at the same time, that statement is appearing in the Vedas, which means that it is true. So how do we reconcile this? So the way we reconcile this is that the statement is to be read as, when one chants the name of Krishna, even one time, then eventually they will return to Krishna. Because the scriptures don't pay a lot of attention to the time factor. The time factor is variable. It is possible of a person to return back to Godhead simply by chanting Krishna's name once, if it is chanted purely. And it is also possible that one might take one lifetime, one might take 10 lifetimes, somebody might take 10 million lifetimes. So that's why the scriptures, they don't concern themselves too much about time. It's non-deterministic, it's dependent on the individual. But what they concern themselves is that how do the events flow. So that is why when Sukdev Goswami is talking about the meditation on the Virat Roop, he's saying that by the meditation on the Virat Roop, one will anchor oneself in the mode of goodness. So when he says that you link everything to Krishna, then he's assuming that one has reached the perfection or the relative perfection when one has already transcended the mode of passion and ignorance. So in the last discussion, we had mentioned this, that uh, at the minimum, the Virat Roop will elevate one to the mode of goodness. And if it is practiced on a consistent basis, it will take us to the path that Sukadeva Goswami is now going to take us to. That from the Virat Roop, one goes to the next stage and and the and the next stage. So this is how we can also, this is a preaching point also. This is how we can, when somebody says that when you talk to somebody and they say that everything in this world is is Krishna, and the good, the bad, and ugly, they're all Krishna, and we have to embrace all of it, which is in a way of them justifying the presence of bad qualities. That there are bad qualities in the universe, and they are meant over there for us to embrace because everything is Krishna. Then a counter to that is it's not true. That the process is meant for us to transcend these qualities and go to the higher modes. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he writes that the process of concentrating on the different bodily parts of the Lord will gradually diminish the demoniac challenge of godlessness and bring about gradual development of devotional service to the Lord. Everything being a part and parcel of the complete whole, the neophyte student will gradually realize the hymns of the Ishopanishad, which state that the Supreme Lord is everywhere. And thus he will learn the art of not committing any offenses to the body of the Lord. This sense of God-mindedness will diminish one's pride in challenging the existence of the Lord. Thus, one can learn to show respect to everything, for all things are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Then later on, he says that materialistic philosophers and scientists are too much engrossed with atomic energy and the gigantic situation of the universal form, and they offer respect more seriously to the external phenomenal feature of the materialistic manifestation than to the nominal. So nominal basically means the transcendental. Because they are unable to accept the personal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Lord is kind enough to demonstrate the Virat Roop of his transcendental form. And herein, Srila Sukadeva Goswami has vividly described this form of the Lord. Okay. To the next verse, which is the last verse in this chapter. After that, we'll stop for any questions or comments. Sa sarvadivrit Nitya Anubhuta Sarva Atma Yatha Swapna Jane Kshite Kaha Tam Satyamanand Nidim Bhajeta Nanyatra Sajedyata Atmapata. One should concentrate his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone distributes himself in so many manifestations, just as ordinary persons create thousands of manifestations in dreams. One must concentrate the mind on Him, the only all blissful absolute truth. Otherwise, one will be misled and will cause his own degradation. So, this is the concluding verse of the chapter that generally we see that the concluding verse is a succinct summary of the chapter. So, the verse actually gives us two important messages. And Srila Prabhupada, so the two important messages are apparently contradictory messages. So, Srila Prabhupada in the purport will enunciate both the messages and also reconcile their apparent contradiction. So the first interpretation of the verse is given by Vishwanath Chakravarti, and as per him, this is a verse that is meant for a practicing yogi. So the focus over here is the dreamlike state. So according to the first interpretation, this verse is a caution to the yogi who is meditating on the Virat Roop. So when one practices yoga, what happens? That uh, one acquires siddhis. Siddhis like anima, lagima, garima. So Sukadeva Goswami is saying that as as a aspiring transcendentalist, but essentially a materialist who's aspiring to be a transcendentalist, as he begins to meditate on the Virat Roop, then he will notice that material prowess will begin to develop in him, which are essentially these siddhis. Now, all these siddhis are so they are nothing new. So these are basically uh, abilities of the soul which are covered when it is embodied, or understanding it a little differently, these are the abilities that have been developing over a long period of time. Because remember, this process of making advancement by meditation. Now, in this case, the object of meditation is the Virat Roop, but it is a long process. So when a yogi starts developing these processes, then he will also begin to have this sense of deja vu. That I know this, I had this powers earlier on. That deja vu may be because of previous lifetimes when he had also witnessed these powers coming, or it may also be going back to the quality of the soul, which has all these powers in its entirety. So all the Ashtasiddhis that appear partially through the process of yoga, they manifest completely through the process of bhakti, but because of a different reason. Because one comes in direct contact with the soul. But this verse is not talking about the devotees. It's talking about the Astanga yogi, one who is meditating on the Virat Roop. So he's saying that don't be misled. Do not be misled by these powers. One should see these powers. One may have this one may have this dream-like association with the powers, but one should treat it like a dream. So how does one treat a dream? Typically, one treats a dream as something that has no factual basis. So one may dream that in the dream I am a king. Now, if the person wakes up and begins to act like a king, then the person will be considered to be mad, right? He says, I dreamt that I am a king, so therefore I am a king. and you should treat me like a king, it's not likely. It will, it will happen. So a sane person will take the dream and will understand that it has no factual basis and disregard it. So the injunction to the yogi is that these powers that are developing in you, consider them to have no factual basis. Consider them just to be like a dreamlike sequence and put them aside. Do not make them a hindrance to your to your to your advancement. Vishwanath Chakravarti also gives the reference of Bhagavatam 3:27-30, which says the same thing. I won't go. You can look at the reference, but essentially he substantiates his point. The second explanation to this verse is given by Jiva Goswami, and as per Jiva Goswami, what this verse is doing is that Sukadev Goswami, after describing the meditation on the Virat Roop, is rejecting it and recommending bhakti. So what he is saying is that the yogi, Saha, after perfecting dharana on the universal form, having realized everything in the universal form, Sarvatma, by his senses, Driviti, should now worship Narayan. So he is taking the meditation on the Virat Roop as a means to an end. That, okay, now you have meditated on the Virat Roop, but now that you have understood more about the nature of Krishna, now you transcend this material conception of Krishna and worship Narayan, who is the super soul of the universal form, who is Satyam Ananda Nidhim. Sukadeva Goswami says, Satyam Ananda Nidhim, who is the ocean of eternal bliss. And when he says that you should not be attached to anything, he's saying that do not be attached to the Virat Roop. That you may have spent many, many lifetimes meditating on it, but now that you have transcended it, move beyond it. Do not be attached to the universal form, as this will cause you to fall back into samsara. Just as a dreaming person becomes bewildered if he becomes too attached to the dreams. So different interpretation of the dream over here. That a person who's too attached to the dreams will fall down. A person who becomes too attached to the Virat Roop will stay engrossed in the material world and never make any real progress. So Jiva Goswami says, Sukadev Goswami's recommendation is, after having used the Virat Roop to make progress, to transcend the modes, at least the mode of passion and ignorance, to having trained your senses to look at Krishna in every aspect of the creation, one must proceed to Satyamanandanidhim. One must proceed to the ocean of material bliss. I'm sorry, the ocean of eternal bliss. So same verse, two explanations which are apparently contradictory. So Vishwanath Chakravarti's recommendation is increase your attachment to the Virat Roop, but become detached to the siddhis that appear in you because of this meditation on the Virat Roop, but increase your attachment to the Virat Roop. Jiva Goswami is saying that after having attained material detachment, also develop detachment to the Virat Roop. Otherwise, you will stay enmeshed in the material world. How do we reconcile these two? So Prabhupada explains in the purport. So Prabhupada gives both these explanations and then he reconciles. He says the whole material creation, therefore, is one with and different from Narayan simultaneously. And this supports the Achintya Bheda Bhed Tattva philosophy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Being an emanation from the glancing potency of Narayan, the whole material creation is non-different from him. So this is how we can understand being attached to him. But because it is affected by his external energy, Bahirangamaya, and is aloof from his internal potency, Atmamaya, the whole material creation is different from him at the same. So this is how we can understand developing detachment from it. So further in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he also uses this analogy of dream to explain this tattva further. So the way he explains is that an ordinary person will dream, and in his dreams he will create many situations in which he may become entangled. So many times students have this dream, especially on the days before the exam. They have this dream that they are late for the exam, and when they're late for the exam, then the paper gets messed up, or they're answering the exam and they answered the wrong questions, and then the dream is becoming so entangling. And then at some point they get up and then say, you know, I'm so happy that it was a dream and it wasn't real. Just the subconscious playing tricks. So Srila Prabhupada is talking about that kind of situation, that a person in the dream might create many situations and then also become entangled within the dream. So in the same way, the material world is also a dream. That is the creation of the Lord. So, so now Srila Prabhupada is talking about the dreaming of the Lord. So when Lord Vishnu goes into Yoga Nidra, then the result of his dreaming is the creation of the material world. So Prabhupada does not delve very deeply into this, but for obvious reasons, that this is not where Prabhupada would like us to spend a lot of time. But there is a group of philosophers who speak and write books upon this, where they mention that how this whole material world is the result of the dreaming of Lord Vishnu. So that is why when he's in Yoga Nidra, then his dreaming results in the creation of the material world, and the jivas are nothing but a figment of his imagination. And when he wakes up, then the dream is finished, the whole material world is annihilated. So, and that is obviously not what the Vaishnava Tattva is, and that is obviously not what Srila Prabhupada is talking about. But what Srila Prabhupada here is talking about is that some people may consider the material world to be a product of the dreamlike state of Lord Vishnu. But then he clarifies, the Lord never becomes entangled. That's the difference. If one were to consider the material world as real, but temporary and always connected with the Lord, one will see the relationship between the Lord and the material world. So now he's clarifying. So he puts in that statement over there, and then right after that he clarifies that one should not think that this material world, and Prabhupada makes a statement in the Bhagavad Gita, that the material world is real but temporary. It's not false. If the material world was false, then everything in the material world will be false. We would be false. The deities would be false. The holy name would be false. The Guru and Vaishnavas would be false, right? Which basically negates the whole Vaishnava Tattva. So they are not false. They are real. And the fact that they are temporary is not because the Tattva is temporary, but because our interaction with it is temporary. It's like I go to somebody's house and I live there for 3 days. Then for 3 days I have interaction with the person, and then I leave the house and go back to my house, right? So it does not mean that I exist for only 3 days. It just means that the nature of my engagement was limited to 3 days. So that is the temporary part of it. So Srila Prabhupada goes on to say that the conclusion is that one should unhesitatingly, become a worshipper of Lord Krishna, or for that matter, his plenary expansion Narayan, and no one else, and none else. So Sukadev Goswami is also giving an aspect, a glimpse into an aspect of Krishna's powers, that everything within the universe is a single fragment of Krishna's power. And there is so much more. For those who get impressed by the material world, when they understand that this is just a fragment of Krishna's potency, then they will get even more impressed with Krishna. Now, from a personal basis, we can't love power. We can be in awe of it, we can appreciate it. But when we start appreciating power, then it is just a matter of time that the person becomes to appreciate the powerful. One begins to understand that the power is coming from somebody. And then that is a step towards personal, developing a personal relationship with the personality of Godhead, which in a sense is the summary of the first chapter. That look at the impersonal form of Krishna, and looking at this impersonal form of Krishna, you will get an appreciation of his potencies, and then you will develop an appreciation for one who holds these potencies. Okay, so so this is the end of the second chapter, second canto, first chapter. I'll stop over here and then see if there are any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
One simple question. When here we are talking about to get in connection with the Virat Roop, and basically to summarize this, like we need to appreciate the potency, looking at each and every aspect in connection with Krishna. So when we talk about in many scriptures and many lectures, we see lotus feet of Krishna. So to meditating lotus feet of Krishna is more focused in every, probably many of the writings and all, right? So what do you mean? What is the aspect of it? Like, should we connect with this Virat Roop, or should we connect with Krishna everywhere? What is our understanding there?
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a good question. So I'm going to answer it in the context that you've asked, that in the past we have talked about meditation on the lotus feet of Krishna. That is meditation on the lotus feet of the personal form of Krishna. Now, in this chapter, we have also studied that the feet of Krishna are the Shudras, and the feet of the Krishna are the lower planetary systems, which is different. But in the context that we typically are being asked to relate to the lotus feet of Krishna, that is Krishna, the personality of Godhead, and his lotus feet. And in the first canto, when we were studying, we actually spent almost one entire lecture discussing the significance of the lotus feet of Krishna. That why is there so much of attention on the lotus feet of Krishna? It helps us develop humility. The lotus feet of Krishna is a residence of the tirthas. So when we meditate on the lotus feet, we are meditating on the holy places. The lotus feet of Krishna is where his devotees live. So when we meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna, we are also associating with his devotees. The lotus feet of Krishna embody his mercy. So when we are meditating on that, we are also claiming our right to access the mercy of Krishna. If it helps you, I'm not sure if I did send you, but I have a pretty exhaustive set of notes on the significance of the lotus feet of Krishna. And I can send that to you and you can disseminate it to the, it is both, it is a set of quotations from different scriptures glorifying the lotus feet, and also a more qualitative understanding, the points that I made, that why are devotees so much hankering? Ai nanda tanuja kinkaram patitama jagme bhavambadu. That, that, oh Krishna, please give me, please make me a, uh, um, your servant. So the reason the devotees are hankering so much after the lotus feet is because it gives them that which is most lacking in them. So if you're sick, and let's assume you have what is iron deficiencies, like what is it called, anemia, 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 right? So you may have other food items that are rich in proteins or whatever it is, but you will go for food items that are rich in iron. That's what you need. So the lotus feet of Krishna, there are the devotees who personify mercy. There is Krishna's mercy over there. There are the holy places which create a conducive environment for spiritual advancement, and which is why aspiring devotees, not even aspiring, perfected devotees, they they uh, uh, they speak, they write, and they sing so much about Krishna's lotus feet. But the short answer to your question, Prabhu, is that is the lotus feet of the personal form of Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. So the other, actually, it's a clarification. It's not a question. Maybe it is a weird clarification. The question I have is,
So Prabhu, you have
we,
developed some siddhis. I see two of you.
one camera is not working properly. So
Oh, I see one of you at the top and one of you at the bottom.
okay.
But
So
both of you are doing the same thing. So I'm guessing it's the.
okay. So
Sorry.
question is, Prabhu, within this earth, this bhuloka, we see this. We spoke about all the rivers and all, right? So if you see from the other spiritual places, like just we finished our retreat with Rumpat Maharaj, he explained different seven lokas up and seven lokas down.
Hmm.
So how do you see the representations there?
So your question is that if you happen to be a resident of Brahmalok,
Yeah,
then would the Bhagavatam, would these representations be still relevant to you or
e-
not?
exactly. How do you? Definitely, there will be some relevance, right? Like if scriptures are coming from higher planets, because if you say like in moon planet, the life is different. Sun planet is like different. Brahmaloka, it's different. Just yesterday only we had that review with Maharaj. I
Hmm.
was thinking,
I didn't get your question, Prabhuji.
So maybe I can explain. At least I think I can explain. What Prabhu is asking is that so this description that is given in the description of the universal form, if somebody was a resident of, let's assume, Brahmalok, would it be relevant to him also? How would he perceive it?
you got it.
Yeah, that was the question. So it's a good question. I do not know if I have an answer that I've heard about the question that I can share with you. But what I can do is, I guess think aloud with you and see if it makes sense. Um, the the Vedas are absolute. So the Upanishad that is given to us is the same Upanishad that is given to Lord Brahma. The Rig Ved, Sam Ved that are given to us are also given in Patalok and Janalok and Tapalok. So they are, they never change. Not true for the Puranas. The Puranas are different for us. They are different for the denizens of higher planets. The Bhagavatam that we have is 18,000 verses. The Bhagavatam that is spoken in the higher planets has several crores of verses. The Mahabharata that we have is 100,000 verses. The Mahabharata that was spoken by Vaishampaya Muni in the in front of Indra and the Devas, it had 1 crore verses there. And there it's also mentioned, he says that I'm presenting to you the abbreviated form of Mahabharata, which means that in the higher planetary system, even higher than the Svarglok, the Mahabharata is even more elaborate there. So the Puranas, they adjust themselves to Kaldesh and Patra. The Bhagavatam that we are studying is different from the Bhagavatam that was studied 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, because this Bhagavatam was spoken 5,000 years ago. So in his seminar, Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, in his seminar on 10 subjects of the Bhagavatam, he makes this point that the Puranas were always counted as 18. Then how can one understand that Srila Vyasadeva composed the Bhagavatam only 5,000 years ago? Otherwise, in the Padma Puran, it is mentioned there are 18 Purans. They should have mentioned it has 17 Purans, because the Padma Puran predates the Bhagavatam. And then he says there was always a Bhagavatam. But the Bhagavatam that was spoken by Srila Vyasadeva replaced the Bhagavatam that comes before that. So my understanding is that this Bhagavatam is meant for us. It is meant for us in this particular loka. So that is why when they talk about Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, this classification is not there in Svarglok. There are no Shudras in Svarglok there. Or when it talks about the different kinds of animals, not sure about that. If there are camels and etc. in Brahmalok, I don't, probably not. But it is actually meant for us. So that's how we understand it. Yeah. Anybody has some other thoughts about this? Like I said, I'm just thinking aloud because I'm not able to quote from what I have read or heard on this.
It makes sense, bro. Thank you.
And one more thought, Prabhuji, like in the same line, that like certain aspects that you mentioned may be true, but Mahabharata is a example, a pastime or activities happened on earthly platform, so they can be more elaborately explained, but still Brahmana, Kshatriya, those segregations could be there, although because they are more knowledgeable, even the denizens of Brahmalok or Svargalok, so they must be aware of this classification. They are more knowledgeable to know this information, to understand. So it may be also there, kind of. It may be more descriptive than here because our lifespans are small with other reasons.
That too. And the other aspect is that if you look at the Mahabharata, then it also talks about the antecedents. Right? Who was Bhishma? Bhishma was Diyu. He was one of the Vasus, right? So this I heard Prabhupada Maharaj talk about, saying that the reason the Mahabharats increase in length is because the number of the antecedents, the depth of the subplots, they become deeper and deeper. Like he says that in Ramayana, the pastime of who was that? Who was the wife of Gautam Rishi who became a stone?
Ahalya.
Anasuya, Ahalya.
Ahalya, right? So in Ramayana, Ahalya is mentioned, but then in other Puranas, there is a lot of pastimes about the antecedents of Ahalya. That, how did Ahalya come into existence? That a group of demigods, they went to Brahma and they began to tease him. So there's a different pastime that comes there. And why did they go to tease him? There's another pastime that comes with respect to the Narayan Rishi. That, this is what happened. So then he says that this is how, one pastime to another pastime to another pastime, and they can span the entire 14 planetary system. So that's how they become bigger and bigger and bigger and more composite. But he says that the the expertise of the acharyas is that the message that is given in the Mahabharata to us is the same as the message that is given in Brahmalok or Swarglok or Patal. That's the expertise of that. When Vyasadeva gave the Mahabharata to us, he edited it, but he did not edit the message. The message was preserved in its entirety.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances or glories. Prabhu, just wondering about this Virat Roop, how it is perceived in different lokas. So I was thinking why it should be differently perceived, because we in the Bhuloka we perceive the Virat Roop, and also we know what the Virat Roop represents in Patal Loka below us. So the perspective of Virat Rupa, we understand the foot of the Lord is the lower planetary systems. Similarly, if you are in Brahmaloka, then we would understand whatever the navel of the Lord is the Bhuloka. So why should there be any difference? And that's what I was thinking. Like, when Prabhu asked the question, I was thinking, why should it be different if it's absolute, the material, it encompasses the entire material creation? Then wherever you are, from that perspective, you view the Virat Rupa from that angle. I don't know whether that makes sense, Prabhu.
It does make sense. It does make sense to a great extent, but some of the aspects of the Virat Roop that are described, you may or may not be. And really speaking, I'm at this point talking about things that probably are very specific to Bhulok, like the quadrupeds, the animals, the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So this whole Varnashram system, this is not so much, or this is like in Svarglok you don't find the Varnashram system. The point I was making is that I'm not sure if there is in Brahmalok, the same kind of division of animals, the quadrupeds and etc. is there. I think the point that you're making, the point that Ravi Prabhu was making, is that even if the Brahmanas are not there in Brahmalok, they have awareness of the Brahmanas in Bhulok. So then they can relate in that way. That yes, we know there are Brahmans in Bhulok, their quality is prominently in the mode of goodness. So when we look at something in the quality of goodness, then we think about the Virat Roop. So in that sense, I would agree with you that for the most part, this description of the Virat Roop is basically fungible across the 14 planetary systems. I think we went into a little bit of a detour or I went into this detour of are the Puranas the same across the 14 planetary systems? And that's where I said that my understanding is that they are not. The Puranas are different. And perhaps the Puranas that are present in the higher planetary system, they present things that are more specific to them. They present pastimes that are more specific to them as opposed to us. I think to some extent, at least I'm feeling that I think to some extent we are going into areas, or I'm going into areas where we may be speculating. So I want to wrap up this question and this line of Q&A, at least with what I would think is reasonable conclusion, that the Virat Roop that is present is the universal form, which means that the Virat Roop can be appreciated from the anywhere in the universe. Even the aspects of the Virat Roop that may be specific to our planetary system, they may not be present in other planetary system, but that does not stop them from being able to appreciate it from a qualitative basis. So that seems to me to be the two basic, I guess, core points that would be extracted. I think the other points to some extent are discussions and thinking aloud, maybe speculation.
Another thing also, we understand from Maharaj's lecture that how the Mayavadis see the Virat Roop. And they say the Virat Roop is for the people in the material world who are conditioned. But once they get out of the realm of conditioned state to liberated state, there is impersonal Brahman, which is higher than the Virat Roop. So that is their understanding. So whereas our understanding is the higher than the Virat Roop is personality of God. So I thought that Maharaj mentioned this one. So
Right. So the Mayavadis, their approach is from form to formless, and the devotees' approach is from form to form to form. So from material form to spiritual form, the form stays consistent. But for the Mayavadis, anything that is a form is a preliminary realization, whether it is the form of the deity, whether it is, and the Virat Roop is essentially a gigantic form, but anything that is a form is a stepping stone to the formless realization. And I think this was a discussion that we also had either last time or week before last, when Achuta was asking that then what is the difference between two people who are meditating on the form, and one branches towards the Mayavadi and the other branches towards the devotional aspect of it. What is it that makes this distinction? And then Srila Prabhupada mentioned that essential. So technically it is dharana ashraya. Where does that one person's dharana is? Where does that person take shelter in terms of one's engagement? And notionally, it is, Srila Prabhupada mentions that if that person is fortunate to get association of a devotee.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, just one comment about the, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, to reconcile. The way we can see in Krishna's form, there is everything, even from the camel to the water. Is reconcile this verse. This is another way of looking at it. How, because somebody can say, how can everything be in the body of Krishna? This is a way. Everything is there.
Correct, because it's all resting on Krishna.
Prabhu, I had a question. I missed a part of the discussion. My children were talking at that time. You were saying that, one of the goal of Virat Rupa is to see Krishna in matter, to see where, so, and then you made the counter argument, what about lust, anger, greed and all of that? Is that also in the Virat Rupa? And I missed the part where you reconciled it. I mean, you said the question was, somebody may pose a question, then that means that Virat Rupa has those negative things.
So the way we reconciled that was that if one was to steadily practice his meditation on the Virat Roop, then because of that, even though it's an indirect connection with Krishna, but still, nevertheless, there is a connection with Krishna, which will purify one of the lower modes. So the point I was making is that many times in the scriptures, the intermediate stages, they are kind of glossed over, and the more mature stages are presented. So these set of verses, they talk about the more mature stages of one who is meditating on the Virat Roop. So through this process of Virat Roop, the lower modes of uh, anger, envy, lust, and greed, which are basically modes of passion and ignorance, have already been purified. So what does that mean? That a person who is meditating on the Virat Roop will not, since is not situated in lust or anger or envy, will not see those qualities, and therefore will not attribute them to Krishna.
So by restating that, so by meditating on the Virat Rupa, our impurities are taken away. We are situated in a mode of goodness. Thereby, we don't attribute those negative things to Krishna. But for hey, hold on, Govinda. Okay, okay. But for those who, the two kind of transcendentalists we're talking about, the impersonalist and the personalist, it's the personalist who probably can get over that. But for an impersonalist, that those negative attributes towards Virat Rupa will still remain, correct?
No, not even for them.
Not even for them.
No, because see, the process of the meditation on the Virat Roop is purifying. And through that purification, one ascends the modes. Now, the mode of goodness is also a material mode, but at least it is divested of lust, anger, envy, etc. The difference comes is that when one has perfected the meditation on the Virat Roop, then what does one do with that perfection? And that's where the fork in the road comes. That a devotee will take that perfection and then apply it to meditating on the personal form of Krishna. So that is what Sukadeva Goswami will speak in the next two chapters. He will talk about the path that is followed by a devotee. That they meditate on the Virat Roop, they make advancements, they use the meditation on the Virat Roop to purify themselves of the modes, which will also be achieved by the impersonalists. But then the devotees will use that perfection to meditate on the more personal forms of Krishna. That is the Paramatma and the Bhagwan form. The impersonalists, on the other hand, will use that perfection to meditate on the impersonal form of Krishna. And then his destination will be something else. Just like deity worship, right? The impersonalists also worship deities. They also go to the temple, they will give obeisances to the deities, they will sing and dance in the kirtan. Why are they doing all that? The reason they're doing all that is saying that whatever perfection that I will achieve out of this, I will use this to increase my meditation on the impersonal form. So now that does not mean that they don't get any benefit out of the obeisances they give to the deities or sing and dance in front of the deities, but they use it for a different purpose. That you do some hard work, you get $100 for that. One person may use the $100 to do something to benefit humanity. The other person may go to a bar and drink liquor for $100, but the $100 you still had. You have the discretion to spend it whichever way you have.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I think we should not be confused that for us, Vaishnava and follower of Srila Prabhupada, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I think we should not worry about the Virat Roop. It's just a transition. What we are reading is it's a yoga ladder that we discussed earlier before. That we are going through a phase now, but it doesn't mean that we will not stop here. For us, we are going forward to the next chapter that you're talking about. It's just a transition. We should not I would even say that we should not even meditate on the Virat Rup, because we know Krishna, we know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we know the holy name. It's just for other people to understand, and for us also to understand that it exists.
True, true. So yes, I would definitely not expect you to start meditating on the Virat Roop as
Yes.
the result. Or the next chapter. The next chapter is meditation on the super soul. The chapter after that is meditation on Krishna. So we are right. It has been given to us to explain the process. It's been given to us to understand the different stages that other people can be. But we have the shelter of Mahaprabhu, so we are following. We have jumped to the third chapter straight away.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada gave us Krishna book first. You know, he did not tell us to start from the beginning. Krishna book.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Prabhuji, Dandavats, this is Bhakti Ratnagar Das. Prabhuji, I have one basic question which came in our discussion, so I wanted to get it clarified. You have mentioned that sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Mind wanders due to the fickle nature, right? So you have asked us to see everything in relation to Krishna, right? And subsequently, you have mentioned that when the mind goes to lust, greed, and it's somewhat in relation to the earlier question by some Mataji, lust, greed, and ignorance. But you told with the meditation on the Virat Roop or on Krishna, it doesn't matter for us, for Bhaktas, it is Krishna. We transcend the modes, right? The mode of ignorance and the mode of passion. So my question is that even the lust, and this is my basic question, that the lust and the greed, they are also present, because everything Prabhupada says that in the literature that everything is, jealousy is there, lust, greed, everything is there in the spiritual world, right? So how do we, I'm not very clear on that how they are present there, because they have some negative connotation. That's the only reason my doubt is that they are there, but why they are existing, what is their magnitude in the spiritual world, those qualities?
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. It's a good question. So a little bit tangential, but I think since we are talking about it, it's also relevant. So 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 let me rephrase the question, and if you can verify that I'm on the right track. Your question is that we are saying that as we make advancement, we should expunge the qualities of lust, anger, envy, greed from us. But then at the same time, this notion is there that all these qualities are also present in the spiritual world. So after expunging this, or more fundamentally, why should we worry about expunging these qualities if they are going to be there in the spiritual world also?
Right, Prabhuji. Yeah, they are there. So what is their role? I'm trying to understand their role in there. They have a perverted reflection here on the material world,
Right.
which we have to transcend through bhakti.
Yes.
That's what my understanding is. But I'm trying to correlate that what there must be having some role there, and
Yes.
what is their role?
Yes.
That's my question.
Yes. Good. So I think a lot of your the answer to your question, I think you've shared with us also that they have a perverted reflection. So they are present in a pristine form in the spiritual world, but in a perverse form over here. What we have to transcend is actually the perverted reflection. The other part of your question is, what is the role of these qualities in the pristine form in the spiritual world? The one big difference between the material and the spiritual world, or the essential difference between the material and the spiritual world, is that in the spiritual world, everything is centered towards increasing one's service to Krishna. In the material world, everything is centered towards increasing one's service to one's own self. So in that context, we can understand the pristine and the perverted form. that in the material world, when we are envious because if some is because in relationship to us, if somebody is getting more opulent, more popular, more knowledgeable with respect to us, we become envious. How does envy in the spiritual world manifest? It manifests in relationship to Krishna. How does it manifest in relationship to Krishna? So the basic question that everybody is asking over there is, what can I do to serve Krishna? There are many situations in which this quality of envy is used to serve Krishna. In chapter 10, and this is specifically in the middle chapters 26, 27, 28, we see this quality of envy amongst the gopis, right? But how is this gopi, how are these gopi manifesting this quality of envy? That they're manifesting it in order to increase the rasas with Krishna. So there is some pleasure that Krishna is getting. And in order to accentuate that pleasure, there is this quality of envy that is being manifested. There is this quality of lust that is being manifested. The quality of anger that is being manifested. But the superficially they may look material, but the difference is that the only reason these qualities are manifested is to increase one's service to Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada would give us, so understanding it in the context of lust is a little difficult because it's it's an intricate topic. But Srila Prabhupada would explain it from the perspective of anger. And he would give the example of Arjun. That Arjun used his anger in the service of Krishna. And that's why his quality was transcendental. So externally, when you look at Mahabharata, you see Arjun as a really ferocious warrior, as is the case with Bhim, that over the 18 days, he killed literally hundreds and millions of people. The whole Akshwini made of Narayani Sena, which was Krishna's Sena, they were actually annihilated single-handedly by Arjun. And an Akshwini is 200 and some thousand, whatever people. Arjun killed millions of people. Yet he's glorified. He's glorified. Nobody ever says that he is a mass murderer or he created genocide, because he was using that quality of anger in the service of Krishna. So that's the essential difference. But the point that you're making is philosophically true, that any quality that is here in this material world is there because it has its origin in the spiritual world. But when it comes to the material world, it becomes perverted because its focus changes. In the material world, the focus of everything is ourselves. Material world, we get angry in relationship to ourselves. If somebody has insulted us, somebody has stolen from us, somebody is threatening us, we become angry. Arjun became angry only because Krishna asked him to become a nimit matra. You become a mere weapon in my hand. I have already put all these soldiers to death. Now you become a weapon in my hand and do what I've asked you to do. In that service, he exhibited anger and rendered service to Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, very much. So on a similar line, sorry to deviate, but I have this question, lingering one, that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that I'm there in everything, in every atom. Prabhupada writes in the purports. But at the same time, he says that though I am there, I am not there. That also is a little confusing to me. Prabhuji, you can clarify, that would be great. If you think this topic is not, you can clarify at the right time when it comes.
So I can speak briefly about this, Prabhu. So it's discussed in Bhakti Shastri, of course, this point. So when he says I'm there and I'm not there, he's talking about two different aspects of understanding. He's there for the devotees, he's not there for the non-devotees. For the devotees, he's everywhere. When the devotees drink water, the devotees eat food, when devotees see mountains, similar to the Virat Roop, but in a more personal way, he's there for the devotees. The non-devotees, they see the same thing, and he's not there. Second way of understanding it is that he's there by his energies, but he's not there in his personal form. So making this distinction that I am there. Why am I there? Because all this is being sustained by my own energy. But I'm not there. Why? Because I'm in Golok Vrindavan. So this distinction between Krishna's form and his energies, that is also manifested through this statement. And there are more explanations that are given in Bhakti Shastri, during Bhakti Shastri on this. But these are the two essential points that are made.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Good question. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, one small question in the line, the Prabhuji asked the question, like with respect to the example of anger, like I could understand Prabhuji, but with respect to envy, like a gopis also has envy. So envy in spiritual world means I wanted to do more service to Krishna. Is that the envy, Prabhuji? But still I is there.
Not really. So not envy in that way, but envy in assisting Krishna in his pastimes. So there is apparent envy between Srimati Radharani and Chandravali, right? There is apparent envy between Jatila Kutila and Srimati Radharani. But then you can ask this question that how can envy exist in the spiritual world? Because we say, what is the fabric of the material world? Right? It's envy. So if envy was there in the spiritual world, then what's the difference? But the difference is that all those pastimes, they are meant to increase the pleasure of Krishna. So Krishna goes through all these so if everything was happening as per the wishes of Krishna, then Golok Vrindavan would become Vaikuntha. Right? In Vaikuntha, there's nobody who can dare come and yell at Lord Narayan. Right?
Yes.
There's nobody who will come and chastise him or tie him to the grinding mortar. Everybody comes before Lord Narayan, they recite the Pushta Sukta, they give obeisances. So this whole mood of awe and reverence is predominant there, which is why it's considered to be a lower manifestation. In Goloka, the other rasas also manifest, right? The higher rasas. How can Vatsalya manifest unless there is this component of anger over there? Right? If the parents don't get angry with you, they're considered to be parents in name only. I mean, can you imagine parents that don't get angry on you? I think in this country maybe, but in India, all parents beat up the children. That's their birthright, right? And that's what to some extent binds the children to the family. So also, one can say that how can anger exist in the spiritual world? Because Vatsalya Ras is there. What is the nature of Madhurya Ras? Nature of Madhurya Ras is extreme possessiveness. What comes with possessiveness? Envy, jealousy, right? So how can Madhurya Ras exist without extreme possessiveness there? Even in Dwarka, which is relatively in the mode of Aishwarya, just because it is Madhurya, we see that. We see this conflict between Rukmani Devi and Satyabhama, and Satyabhama saying, I'm the prominent wife, and you should get me the Parijata flower because you got Rukmani the Parijata flower. So all that is there. If you divest all this from the spiritual world, it will just become Aishwarya Rasa there, right? So the proper way to think of it is that not that people become envious and in the spiritual world, but they use envy in order to serve Krishna through this multitude of rasas.
Yes, externally that envy also looks like this envy, like between wife and like that, but the deeper level they have all for giving for pleasure to Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, just one more comment about this. I also heard that, or I read somewhere that to get pure love, we have to have intense greed, and which can be seen to be a very bad quality, but we have to have intense greed for Krishna.
Laulyam.
Good. So we'll end over here. All good questions for Wednesday. My request to you would be to revise your notes from the first canto, first chapter. What I'll do is I'll do an overview of the second chapter, and I'll also do an overview of the second canto. We did a brief overview. I want to revisit that and do an overview of the second canto and the second chapter, but that should not take me too long. I think it should take me maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. And I want to leave that whatever the rest of the time is. If you go till the whole hour and a half, it's fine. If not, however long we go. But I would just encourage you to read back your notes, and if there's any question, comments. It'd be a nice forum for us to discuss before we take a break. And then when we resume in mid-January, we will start with the second chapter of the second canto.
Ruchi, you're leaving on the 10th, right?
Yes.
So we have one more class on the 9th. Is it possible for you?
That's true. I didn't think about that. So maybe what I should do, I don't think I'll be able to complete. So it depends on you. So one thing that we can do is that I can start the second chapter from next class. Two classes will. So the second chapter has, I believe, 30 and some verses. I can try and complete the second chapter. And then we can do the Q&As when I come back, if that works with you. For you.
Yeah, 37 verses.
37 verses, right. So I'll try and complete the second chapter if the devotees recommend that. And then when I return, we can do the Q&A.
Sure.
That would be better.
Prabhuji, sorry, a little selfish question. Can we have I didn't attend the first canto revision, but on consensus, I'm not asking, but just throwing my opinion. The first canto, like the gist, it seems you gave just now, you mentioned. So,
Ruchi, all classes are recorded, and if you go back to the emails, Prabhuji sends all the.
Yeah, Ratnakar Prabhu, I'll send the summary for first canto.
no, I have all the Prem Kishore Prabhu has given me, but I don't know where the summary of the first canto is. So
I'll point you to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then I think what I'll do is that I'll try and finish the second chapter because we have 2 more classes, and then we'll do Q&A when I come back.
Prabhu, if it's not, I don't know if maybe you have planned to do something because you're going to India, and if you reserve that night for doing something different, but we can do the discussion. Then when we come, we do the second chapter.
That's also true, Prabhu. 9th, I think even if you have little free time, better
Yeah,
you need to
because
rest.
I'm sure you will have to do some preparation and all that.
All I have to do is to pick up my bag and go to the airport. I'm okay, but thank you for thinking about that. Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Vanchakalpatarubhescha kripasindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanand.